Hi, this is Marcia.
And this is Kelly.
We are the 2U's of 2U's Fiber Adventures. Thanks for stopping by.
You'll hear about knitting, spinning, dyeing, crocheting, and just about anything else we can think of as a way to play with string.
We blog and post show notes at 2usfiberadventures.com.
And we invite you to join our 2U's Fiber Adventures group on Ravelry. I'm 100 Projects.
And I am Better in Motion.
We're both on Instagram and Ravelry, and we look forward to meeting you there.
Enjoy the episode.
Hi, everyone. This is Kelly, and before you get to the Scotland talk from Marcia and Kim, just a little bit of business that I wanted to take care of, and then at the end, I'll come back and talk a little bit about my Not Along project and the progress that I've been making, and a little bit of a project update. So first, the business. So we had a drawing a couple of episodes ago for the 20 Stitches note cards giveaway, and I just wanted to mention again the winner of that giveaway is Nancy S. Werner, or Nancy Swerner on Ravelry. So Nancy, you're in San Francisco, according to your profile page. Nancy, if you're listening, Nancy Swerner or Nancy S. Werner, please get in touch with me and I can send you the 20 Stitches note cards. Congratulations for winning. We wanted to wait until you heard this on the podcast. If I don't hear from you, I'll try to message you on Ravelry, but I thought it's always fun to hear your name if you're a winner. And also, we have another winner, and that's our Patreon drawing. Our patrons are super important to us, and they help make sure that we can send prizes, mail them, and the money that we get from our patrons helps to purchase prizes, helps to keep the podcast hosting fees paid, and also, again, to make sure that we have enough funding to pay postage for prizes. So we have a patron winner. We have, our winner is Barbara Grist. And so, Barbara, if you'll get in touch with me, your prize is a skein of yarn, 2U's Fiber Adventures skein of yarn. So get in touch with me and I will get me your address and I will get that skein of yarn in the mail for you. All right. So the only other thing I wanted to do before I let you listen to Marcia and Kim's talk about their Scotland trip is I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who responded to our request for reviews. Marcia will be so happy. She won't have to look at that 2-year-old review anymore. We had quite a number of reviews in May. So Holo Kilu, Marin Knitter, Amelia Jo G, Joyce, Max and Cats, Wine Taster, Elizabeth and a bunch of sevens, and LME Call. All of you answered the call to help Marcia out, so you left very, very nice reviews, and I really appreciate it, and I know Marcia will appreciate it also. And I just wanted to say one of them that just gave me a chuckle and made me feel really good. I won't tell you about read them all to you, but Amelia Jo G, she says she's a teenage girl who is really interested in knitting, and she says that Marcia and I are her podcasting yarn grandmothers, and I just love that idea. That is just so cool to me. So Amelia Jo G, thanks for putting a smile on my face when I read that review, and thanks to all of you for going into Apple Podcasts and leaving those reviews, just so that we could get rid of that one bad one that kept popping up and making Marcia anxious. So thanks again, everyone. And now here are Marcia and Kim. And don't forget, I'll be back at the end to talk about my Not Along progress. I hope all of you are making great progress on your Not Along, and we'll talk about that in a bit.
Okay, well, we're back. This is now the evening of June 2nd. And when we finished recording the last time, we were sitting in the car waiting for the Pentland Ferry to go from Gills to St. Margaret's. on the Orkneys. And so we made it to the Orkneys. It's now about 8:30, 9 o'clock, I think. So what we wanted to talk about is the retreat. And so our day driving up to John O'Groats and then the retreat itself. So Kim, let's talk about that trip in the car.
Well, so we left Inverness about 9 in the morning, and it was raining pretty hard. And we got to Ullapool. We will be dancing around the names of these cities. Anyway, Ullapool, and had a wonderful cup of tea. We were looking for pottery, but ended up in a tea shop. And then we're walking back to the car and noticed socks, bright socks in the window.
And so I wrote down the name of the shop. It was called Unlimited Color Company. And we kind of lost our minds in there a little bit. So, Kim, you bought a dress.
Yes.
A really cute sundress. Floral.
Black background with beautiful orange and green flowers.
Yeah.
Kind of long, but very flowing.
Yeah, very nice. And then I bought the woman who owns the shop. Her name is Polly Hood. And she designs handbags, and a lot of the items that were in the shop she designs, and then she goes to India to have them manufactured. But I ended up buying a handbag that's really good looking. It's like black and it's like a dark chestnut brown kind of with black accents. It's very good looking.
And the leather was really nice.
It's really nice. It was quite nicely made. So I bought that. I bought a sweater also, which is kind of ironic that we are knitters, but I ended up buying a sweater that was made in Scotland, and it's kind of a burgundy color, probably, I think. So anyway, I bought that, and then we decided it was time to get in the car ASAP.
We'd only been maybe an hour in the car, and we had a long drive in front of us.
Yeah.
So
then the drive up was, I would say, one of the prettiest drives I've been on in a really long time. It was gorgeous.
Yes.
The landscape kept changing in such dramatic ways.
We would go out of the tree line, and it would look like a spacescape or whatever, because it would just be rocks and a little bit. What looks like brown today will be heather and purple in the summer. And the elevation gains were just crazy up and down and around the hillsides. And there are lots of hikers and canoers and a few bikers, on the road cyclists, a lot of motorcyclists.
Lots and lots of motorcyclists, yeah.
You can tell it's something that people do as a club.
It was so interesting. You would just turn the corner and you would move out of grass fields, turn the corner, and it'd become all rock.
Yes.
And then at one point we turned the corner and it was sand dunes.
Yes.
With grass on them. Really, really interesting. Sometimes wide open beaches, sometimes just sheer drop-off cliffs. So anyway, we should just say that this trip from Inverness to Ullapool and then up the coast was up the west coast.
Yes.
And then our next stop was in Durness. And near Durness, a little bit, I believe it would be east of Durness, is Smoo Cave, which is you hike down to it, and it's a cave that's formed by
wave action.
Wave action, I think.
Yeah.
And so we hiked down to that and walked through the cave.
It just was interesting to see how the water had carved out a cove and then a cave into that cove.
Yeah. And then we went up and had lunch after that. And I did post on Instagram. If you go to my Instagram account, Better in Motion, there is a video of, as we were driving down this real narrow road to go to the restaurant, 2 sheep running past us.
They had escaped from their shepherd, and they were like, "I'm free."
They had escaped, yeah. But
and the other thing about that drive was that I think it was about 20 miles before Durness and 20 miles after Durness. It was single track road.
Yes, and this is what I wanted to really talk about. Is we don't really have that very often at home, but there was these single track roads. They had lots of passing places, they call them, but they're turnouts, yeah. And we finally realized, I don't know, maybe you noticed this before I did, but the passing places actually had white signs saying passing place, so you could actually look ahead. And some of the places we had really good visibility, some places not so much, but overall pretty good visibility down the road. And when you could see that there was a white sign, you knew that there was a passing place up ahead, so you could kind of make a beeline to it before the car came. And people were really good about giving you time to get to a passing place, or we would wait and let them get to a passing place so they could turn off and we could continue on.
I could tell that the really experienced people wanted to kind of do it as a dance. You would both hit the passing place together and keep on moving. But when there were like 2 caravans and a truck, that's a little hard to do.
And that's the other thing, there was a lot of caravans.
Yes. And caravans are campers.
Campers, yeah. So, and then, so that, and I think it was, I said to Kim afterwards that I was exhausted.
Yes.
And I wasn't driving. I was just helping look for cars and bicyclists and whatnot, random rogue sheep.
Well, and also we didn't talk about the sheep on the beach, did we?
No. But anyway, but I was just going to finish my thought. It's like I was exhausted, so I only can imagine how you felt. But we did see lots of interesting things, lots and lots of sheep. And I did post a video also on the Instagram of the sheep that we saw on a beach, that there was 3 herds with border collies herding them, and they had the shepherds down there with them, and it seemed like they were moving them along the beach because that was the most open way to move them, I'm assuming.
Probably flat, because it looked like a lot of the land was boggy at that point, and so probably not a smooth, clear way to travel.
Yeah. So, and then from Smoo Cave, we continued along the north coast to John O'Groats.
Yes.
And I don't think we stopped at all.
We didn't. We were good. We got to Thurso, which was actually the biggest town. And when we got from single track to double track, we hooted and hollered. It was so much easier to go fast because the speed limits are a little crazy. And they just leave it up to your good judgment whether or not you actually should go as fast as this.
Yeah, the speed limits are sort of high. They're high numbers, but so we just made a beeline to John O'Groats, where the Caithness Craft Collective retreat took place at the John O'Groats. It's called Natural Retreats. We got there about 5:30, and we were a little tired, and but we met Louise. And we met a lot of the other women had started arriving. We met our cabin mate, Emily, from
Brooklyn.
From Brooklyn, the other American. There was 3 Americans, and Louise put all 3 Americans in the same cabin.
She figured our jet lag would be about the same.
Yeah. So anyway, Emily was super nice, really, really nice. So let's just talk a little bit about the retreat after we recovered from being tired.
So it was, Louise was wonderful about organizing it, and she wanted everybody to get to know each other, and I'm trying to think, I know she had an icebreaker.
We had an icebreaker where we had to answer something weird or
Special.
silly or unusual about ourselves. And so I said, you gave all of your cards to her, and she'd read out the weird, funny, quirky thing, and then people had to guess who it was. And so I said, my thing was I thought of actually more quirky things about me, but I said I visited 5 whiskey distilleries on Sunday.
Yes.
And everyone knew immediately who it was. But you had to struggle to figure out what it was.
I did. Because I think of my work stuff, but that's not really relevant to who's at this retreat. And so Marcia gave me the hint of saying, oh, my gyrokinesis, because I have been doing that since 2002. And most people go, what? What's that? And there had been a conversation before we came to the retreat about, hey, let's do a yoga class together. And I teach this, and so I said, well, I can lead you through. But it was more around leading them through how to relax their neck, hands, and shoulders, which they all really appreciated, and some tricks that they can use going forward.
So you taught that Friday morning. Everyone got together, and you taught that class. And then...
And then I stayed there, and they had a really interesting, what can you teach somebody? Mm-hmm. And went around the tables, and everybody talked about something that they could teach. And that's where Lorna talked about, I can teach people needle felting and how to make robins. And Nick talked about her tapestry, her weaving work and a collective that she was part of. And so you got to know a lot more about people as they went around the room and talked about things. And I think Barbara talked about aromatherapy. So it was a great way to have openings and conversations with people about things that they knew that were kind of special.
Yeah. Oh, I know we did a trivia contest.
That was the night, yes.
And that was on Friday night. And that was really fun because the questions were hard. And some of the questions, because we're American, we couldn't answer about British television shows and British history. But fortunately, we were paired with Ella, who was great. She had a lot more of the answers than we had.
Well, and she was the farmer's daughter too, so she could answer things about animals. Like there was something about sheep. What
it was like the name of sheep. And I don't know what's the correct term, not the Latin, but the correct.
It was ovine.
Ovine, yes. Yeah. So that was fun, and then we also did. What was the other icebreaker we did?
She had raffles.
We had raffles. You won some yarn.
I did.
And
northern yarn.
We have to grab it. We're sitting here. We're in our hotel. We're sitting on the bed. Let me see.
So it is called Northern Yarn, and it's out of Lancaster, I think. And it's a beautiful purple, and she focuses on indie dyers and just independent producers.
Yeah, it's a really pretty purple.
Yeah.
And then one of the attendees also is a dyer, so she was selling her yarn, and Nick, and her yarn company is Yarn from the Plain, and Kim bought 2 skeins of a beautiful, I don't know, like a
sherbet.
Yeah, like orange sherbet color kind of. I don't know, is that?
Yeah.
A little more terracotta kind of than that, peachy kind of. Beautiful yarn. You got 2 skeins of that, and then I ended up buying 3 skeins of sock weight yarn.
And this is interesting because it's Falkland Merino, and we were talking about yarns coming into the UK from a British colony like Falkland. Is totally fine. It doesn't encounter the same.
Well, I think it was Ella was telling us this. Was it Ella telling this? I don't remember now. But that merino is not really produced in Great Britain.
Yeah.
In the United Kingdom, it's Australia and California, hotter climates. So, but because this is the Falklands are connected to Great Britain, they can actually say that it's British. Merino.
Yes.
So it's stretching the truth a bit.
It's on another continent, but yeah. And it's called British Fibers, Yarns and Fibers, hand dyed in the heart of Cheshire.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I bought the sock yarn I bought was BFL.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and what else? But we had.
Do you want to talk any more about our felted robins?
Oh yes, let's talk about those because Lorna taught that class as we were saying before, and it was really fun. It was needle felting, which I've never done before, and
I kind of thought it was something for people who were really frustrated and just needed to get their aggression out.
Just stab things?
Yes. But Lorna is an amazing teacher, and she just kind of helped us, is very, like, step by step. It wasn't exactly painting by colors, but she gave a lot of guidance of how to build up the robin and how to give it a 3D texture, which was fascinating, and created really unique birds for all of us.
Yeah, and that she compared the needle felting to painting.
Yeah.
And I think it's true. It's almost like you're applying watercolors or paints and blending. And then what I thought was the most interesting thing about the whole needle felting, making these robins, is they didn't really look very, I mean, you could tell it was a bird shape and bird-like, but it didn't seem to have any life to it or anything. And then we made a little light colored piece of fiber to sort of form the eye. It still really didn't look it had no character at all until we sewed on a black bead for the eye, and it suddenly, all the little birds kind of came to life.
Yeah.
Wasn't it amazing? They all had an expression of some sort.
And they're brooches, so you can wear them on the lapel of a sweater or something.
Yeah.
So they're very usable little birds.
Yeah. So we just had a great time. In terms of knitting, I really didn't knit very much on my own stuff because they had asked us to make preemie hats. And when we were in Seattle, and my son drove me over to your house to pick you up to then drop us off at the train station, and you had just pulled out some random yarn,
sock
yarn, and some DK weight yarn. And you knit a hat on the plane, and I didn't. But I started a hat when we were in Inverness, and I finished it. I finished it in Inverness, I think, and then I took some more of your yarn and I knit a second hat at the retreat. And so most of my time was spent working on the hat,
which was easy.
It was very easy, but it was actually really fun because there's really no pattern to it at all. I mean, you just randomly put yarn together, and it was actually kind of fun. I can see where it'd be kind of addictive making all these little preemie hats over and over and over again, because you could probably do one in a day, or a day and a half for sure. I don't know what else to say about the retreat. It was just really fantastic. The facility was beautiful.
Yes.
These really interesting sort of
modern.
Well, they looked very sort of rustic on the outside, sort of weathered silver wood, but the inside ultra modern. And floor-to-ceiling windows on one wall facing the water with a deck. 3 bedrooms. One bedroom had its own bathroom, and then Kim and I shared, we each had our own bedrooms and shared a bathroom. And a little kitchen and dining area. And really nice and comfortable.
Are we going to talk about Castle of May, or is that later? Okay. And then, because we came back, that was on Saturday morning. And then Saturday afternoon, we did the lavender sachet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we went to Saturday morning because the weather was nice. And we were supposed to do the sachets Saturday morning, and then Louise said, they were supposed to do a walk in the afternoon, but she said because the weather was so nice, if we want to do the walk, we could do the walk in the morning, but most people didn't want to do the walk, I don't think. They wanted to do the sachet. So Kim and I went over to the Castle of May, which used to belong to the Queen Mother. And it's the castle that was, after her husband's death, and she didn't really have a role anymore, and to escape London, she bought this castle that was habitable but run down, and renovated it. When she acquired it, it did not have electricity or running water, so she brought all of that in, and that's where she spent her summers. And it has a beautiful garden.
Well, and it really has an amazing panoramic view of the North Sea. I bet it is there. Yeah. And what we thought was so amazing about the castle was how light and airy it was. Yes,
it's a stone building, but when you go inside, it has really large windows, lots of light coming in, and very light, playful colors and playful fabrics. And the interesting thing, too, about the castle is she had all these mementos from gifts from people. And like, for example, there's all these little knickknacks and bric-a-brac that people have given her, and they're humorous little Scotsmen and different things. And she has that in one of the sitting rooms before you go into the dining room. There's all these little things and humorous things. Somebody was joking around and put a little stuffed
Loch Ness monster?
Yes, up on, there's a tapestry hanging on one wall, and someone had stuck it up on top of the tapestry. And she discovered it, but thought it was so funny, so just said, "Oh, keep it there," because she really liked it, and it's still there. So that the home feels very much like she just
It's a home.
Yeah, and it feels like she just walked out. It's very much, it feels like today, kind of. One room she has her TV and the, not DVDs, VHS tapes that she was watching. And it's just really charming. And then the other thing, I love the story too about in the dining room, the rug that was from her mother-in-law. And who her mother-in-law would be Queen Mary, I think. Right?
Yeah.
Anyway, had given her this rug, and it's very old. It's 150 years old, I think. Apparently, the Queen Elizabeth had said to the Queen Mother, let me get you another carpet. And she said, because this one is sun damaged and it actually has holes in it. And she said, no, my mother-in-law gave it to me. I want to keep that carpet. So it's still there, and
it's looking frail.
It looks terrible. It's really bad. Anyway. But charming house.
Yes.
Really, really, really just sweet and warm, and you can tell that clearly a family lived there.
Yes.
And that everybody came to visit her there, and I always sort of thought that she was up there by herself, but it really sounds like she was not. She had lots and lots of guests.
And then the garden was beautiful. Actually, she had two gardens. Mm-hmm. There was like a formal walled garden, and then a wilderness garden. Mm-hmm. And I like the walled garden because you are close to the water, so it would probably be freezing. And so if you're enclosed in this garden, then you could sit out and enjoy the roses and whatever was in bloom. She had a great perennial garden. You could tell they used it for the cut flowers, probably. They'd take it into the castle. Yeah.
And then the last night, Saturday night, we all went out to dinner to Stack's restaurant and had a very nice meal with everybody gathered around. It was really nice. And a lot of people sort of said their final goodbyes Saturday night. And then we did see people on Sunday morning, but then we left Sunday morning. We had to be out of our room by 10, and then our ferry left at 1:30. So we had coffee and had our picture taken at the most northern point of Scotland. and then went to the ferry, and that's where we recorded the last time. So we are now in Kirkwall on the Orkneys, and we'll talk, as it unfolds over the next few days we'll record, but we should just say something about what we've been doing just since we've been here. Well, actually, I'd like to say the ferry. I was a little nervous what was going on the ferry. We have to talk about the ferry. So, because it was unclear. I was watching these buses kind of back up and get ready to back onto the ferry, and I was like, oh my God, Marcia, am I going to have to back onto the ferry? I don't know. How did they get all these cars? Well, and then there was a sign, too, about we have to be ready to exit the vehicle. Quickly. And so then we began to think, well, maybe they're going to just put the car on the ferry they'll drive it on, back it onto the ferry. It was very odd. Which we're hopeful. But then, and I actually took a video of this, what happens is you drive on one side of the ferry, and it's like a circle, and so they just take all the cars on the outer perimeter of the deck, the parking deck. Yeah. And the cars are super close together, and so our car, the little, you're getting close. All the sensors went crazy. Because I was getting close, but and you end up in a circle, and so you just exit the way that you came on, and you don't have to back off. But the buses, the trucks, and the caravans all had to back onto the ferry, and they were in the middle. And so it was kind of like a U-shaped kind of thing. And when you get to the bottom of the U, they said I had to get out of the car. So I just grabbed my knitting, the most important thing, in my coat, and got out of the car, and then waited for Kim. But then when it was time to go back down to the car, I was like, how am I going to get back into the car? Because it's so close to the other driver. I couldn't get in, open up the passenger. In fact, that driver could not get into their car. But I wasn't sure where I was supposed to stand. So I said to Kim, I'm just getting in the car. So I climbed over the driver's seat into the passenger seat because I wasn't sure how it was all going to work. And I was
Well, and in the inner circle, so the ferry had 2 lanes of cars that were in the horseshoe shape, and so only the cars that were in the inner circle of it could the drivers get into the vehicle. And
so then, like the inner circle, a couple cars would leave, and then they would get people into the outer circle.
Exactly.
And then they would leave, and they'd keep doing this till everybody got off. Very interesting process, and
organized.
Very organized, but so different than our ferries, where everybody drives on in one direction, and you just drive off the other end. You know, they just pass through it.
And we could tell that you were not going to get off the way you were not going to drive through it.
Yeah, no, it was really interesting how they loaded the thing. And the other thing very different than a Washington State ferry, it was rough.
Well, yes, it was very rough because you had the Atlantic hitting the North Sea. And so the tides and the waves were pretty extreme north of Stormness, I think it was. And when the Orkney Islands started, there's just a lot of different waterways hitting each other. It's kind of like going over a sandbar, but it was a lot more intense.
Yeah, so it wasn't like horrible, but I was ready to get off the ferry.
Well, and the weather was really, there wasn't a lot of wind, there was no rain.
Actually pretty calm. It's pretty calm. But it was pretty calm, but I still was like, okay, I think I'm ready to get off this ferry.
And it was just an hour.
Oh yeah, it was hardly anything at all, but the wave action was...
It was happening.
It was like we were not feeling at our best.
Yes.
We were ready to get off. But when we arrived in Kirkwall, we checked into our hotel, and then we decided to go for a walk, and we ended up, of course, at a distillery.
Oh, and it's a block away.
Yes. But this was not whiskey, this was gin. And the name of it, I did not write down.
Kirkjuvagr. It's a really interesting, like, Nordic sounding name.
It's almost like they've taken Kirkwall.
Yes.
So it's Kirk, and then the last part is something else. It starts
Jurng or something
like that. But Kim had, I don't remember what you had. You had the one that was sort of the spicy. Aurora, which is spicy, and then the one I had was more juniper berry influence. Gin has juniper berries in it, but it had even more in it. It was very kind of botanical,
yes.
I would say. And our tonic, you had a...
spicy orange.
Yeah, tonic, and I had elderberry. And they were good.
They were really good.
They were really good.
And it's really all about, we were reading on the internet, that it's about distillery tours, and actually you can go in and make your own gin there, but it's not necessarily a tasting room. It was more of a gateway into the distillery for a tour.
Yeah. So we had that, and then we went to dinner, and we're not even going to talk about dinner because it was not good. So we won't even talk about that. And then we came back to...
Actually, we went to St. Magnus,
right,
the cathedral.
Right, St. Magnus, the cathedral, which was beautiful.
And the sun was out, so the stained glass windows were shining on the inside the church beautifully.
Yeah, and the metalwork on the front, on the door was really incredible. I took a couple pictures of that, which I will post. And the wear to the stone was pretty amazing, too. How... it looks so fragile. There's been so much wear to the columns on the outside of the church.
It's sandstone, and I think that the wind... And it's old.
Yeah. But as I say, then after dinner, we just came back to the hotel, and we went to the bar, and we each bought a whiskey. A very small whiskey, which we...
Small pour, yeah.
A very small pour, which now we're just sitting in the room, sitting on the beds recording. We finished that whiskey, so Kim was gracious enough to open up a small bottle that she had purchased. And why don't you tell them about the whiskey we're drinking?
It's a tomatin, yeah. And it was one of the distillers we went to with Gavin. And it's an 18-year-old, so it just has a lot of personality. Smoothness.
It's really smooth, yeah.
And spicy and a great sniff. I don't know. The fragrance of it when you sniff it is amazing.
And so different than the one we bought at the bar.
Yeah, that was Scapa, which is a local Orkney distillery. The bartender was a little disparaging about the Orkney.
The
Whiskeys.
Highland Park?
Yeah.
Is that the one? Yeah, he was a little disparaging of that one. So he suggested the Scapa. And then...
Here we are.
Yeah, he was light on the pour, he thought. But anyway. So anyway, I think that's all we need to say about it. That's an update where we are now on the trip.
Yeah, day one.
Day one down at Orkney. We have a lot of things planned for the next few days. So we'll be back to talk about them.
So, signing off.
All right, bye.
Bye.
All right, this is Kelly again, and I won't keep you long, but it's just been so long since we've talked that I wanted to pop in here and talk a little bit about what I've been doing. We had a heat wave here in Salinas. It started out in the 80s for one day, and then the next day it was in the 90s, and we had a couple of days of 90s, and probably for a short period during the day over maybe up to 100. The weather report said 106. I don't think it ever got to be 106 in this part of Salinas, but we did definitely have high 90s or maybe up to 100. I needed a project so that I could just sit outside and soak up the sun, sit in the shade, drink my lemonade, and feel like it was summer. And so I got out my quilt. This is a quilt that I started making when I was in high school, and I think I've talked about it before. It's made up of squares, and each square is 3 rectangular bars. It might be two solids and a print in the middle, or it might be 2 prints on the edge and a solid in the middle. And then those 3 strip squares are sewn together in alternating directions. So one of the squares has the rectangular bars going horizontally, and the next square next to it will have those rectangular bars going vertically. I had started this quilt when I was in high school. I started it making it out of scraps. Every bit of this quilt, with the exception of a few solids that I had to buy just recently, maybe in the last 2 years, when I started working on it again, every bit of this is scraps from my childhood, either things that I made or things that my mom made. Some of them were things that were made for me. Some of them were things that were made for my sister or my mom or my brother. And some of them were things that are scraps from, I did a little bit of commission sewing in high school. You know, if you are a cheerleader, flag girl, song girl, I was a majorette. They have a summer camp, and for the summer camp you have some summer uniforms. And I remember that I was commissioned to sew summer uniforms for some of the flag girls who didn't sew. So anyway, I think there are some scraps. I'm looking at it right now, and I see some fabrics that I seem to remember as being scraps from those uniforms. So I had made this, sewing it by hand, and so it's all hand pieced. When I picked it back up, I don't know, maybe, I can't remember how many years ago it was that I picked it back up. I washed all the pieces and saw, how much I had. And it was actually, I had pieced a lot of it together into strips, and then I had actually sewn some of the strips together. And when I looked at it, I had made it about 5 foot longer than a bed. I'm not sure where I got my measurements. So I had to take some of it apart so that it wouldn't be, so long that it would be trailing on the floor at the end of the bed. And then I started making strips out of the squares that were remaining and sewing those strips together. So I ended up finishing it. The squares are maybe 5 inches, between 5 and 6 inches. The problem with it is that these squares are not actually square. I was not very concerned about precision when I started this, and then at a certain point when I started to sew the strips together and I noticed that the corners, the squares weren't lining up, then I started taking in some of the squares to make them smaller so that the corners would line up. And so I have all this sort of weirdness going on in the back from when I was, I don't know. I don't know if I was still in high school when I started doing that or if that was later in the project. It doesn't really matter. But I stopped trying to make the squares line up and just started sewing strips together. So parts of it they line up, parts of it they don't. It looks great, I think. I'm really happy with it. And I always joke that when I'm old and my memory has gone, you know how they say that when your memory goes, you remember the long distant past, but not the short-term memory. When I'm old and if my memory has started to fail, I will still remember where these squares came from. And I teased my niece that she's going to have to listen to me tell the stories of all of these squares if she wants to inherit this quilt. So, I mean, we have fabrics here that are my 8th grade graduation dress. We have fabrics that are a coat that I made, a quilted jacket coat that wrapped around. That was an amazing project. When I think about it, I made quite a lot of stuff when I was younger. Starting in about 4th grade, I started sewing, and I sewed all the way through junior high quite a bit, and a little bit into high school as well. I have fabrics here that are from a 4-H quilting project that I did, where I made Christmas stockings. I have fabrics here from my 6th grade graduation picnic outfit. Let's see, what else do I have? Oh, I have a dress that I made that was out of seersucker with little apples, and that was a dress that I wore in my school picture in junior high, and it had like shearing all across the bodice of that dress. In any case, lots of interesting, cool fabrics, lots of memories. Oh, I have to mention another one. Like, doesn't everybody from the 70s have a suit, jacket and skirt with Jonathan Livingston Seagull fabric? Yeah, I had one of those. And that fabric is in here, Jonathan Livingston Seagull fabric. Seagulls on a navy blue background. It was a jacket and skirt suit that I made. I think I must have been like maybe in 6th grade when I made that. I can't imagine that I wore that in junior high. But anyway, that's the quilt project. And so the quilt top is finished. I'm considering this a finished project. I now have a lot of work ahead of me with putting a backing on it and doing the quilting. And I have to make a decision about whether I'm going to hand quilt or machine quilt this. And whichever type of quilting I do, what design am I going to use? Because this thing is not at all square. It's not square anywhere. So it's not like I can make straight lines that will line up with any part of this quilt. So I think it will be some kind of organic, curving design, but I'm not exactly sure what. So that project is a later, putting the backing on and doing the quilting, whether by hand or by machine, is something that will happen much later. I'm leaning towards quilting this by hand because it's all pieced by hand. So that would be kind of a nice thing to do. I've thought about using ties, but I think I want to do quilting on this. So, but no decisions on this project as yet. So that's my only nod-along project that I've been working on. But I did want to update you on my sweater project. So I was making the Karoo sweater, and I had several stalls and rip outs on this. Not the fault of the pattern at all. I kind of joked that something about my fall, even though I did not hit my head, it does seem to have affected my brain, because I've made so many knitting mistakes in the 2 months since the accident that are sort of unexplained. But I've gotten to the point now where I'm ready to pick up for the sleeves on the Karoo cardigan, so I'm looking forward to that. That should be some nice easy knitting, no lace at all in the sleeves, just straight stockinette. So I'm ready to go on that. And then I also started another sweater called Awesome by Laura Chow. The Karoo sweater is by Francois Denoy, Aroha Knits. And then this other sweater is a sideways construction, and I'm using Sakata yarn, and I actually had enough. I finished all the knitting, and now all I have to do is the seaming up of this sweater. So you start at the sleeve, the bottom of one sleeve, and you knit all the way up, and then you cast on for the front and the back. you knit the front and the back, you bind off the front, you knit across the back, you cast on for the other front, you knit the front and the back, you bind off for the top of the left sleeve, and then you knit down the left sleeve to the very end. So interesting sideways construction. I've never done that before. I had some fits and starts with this one too, because when it says repeat these 2 rows 22 times, that means you should have 44 rows, not 22 rows. Apparently, I can't count or multiply. But in any case, I ripped it back and I have redone it, and now both sides have the same number of rows in the back, and it's symmetrical again, and I'm ready to seam it up maybe today. Actually, I should probably block. I might just steam block it before I seam it up and wait to do the regular blocking. This is machine washable, so I think I will go ahead and machine wash it, and maybe I'll even put it in the dryer and not block it. We'll see. I may just wash and dry this as the pattern or the yarn calls for. I was afraid I wasn't going to have enough yarn. This was a yarn that I purchased to make socks, and then I ended up with a whole bag of it because I ran out, or I thought I was going to run out of yarn with the socks. And of course, when I saw the bag on sale, couldn't resist buying a whole bag. And then I tried to give it away to Marcia. Well, I took it back from Marcia to make this sweater. But then I was afraid, oh my gosh, maybe I will run out and I'll have to go searching on Ravelry and buy even more of this yarn that I never meant to buy in the first place. But I have enough. And I have enough, just enough to seam it up with tiny little bit should be left after that. So that is a win in my book. I used up yarn that's been sitting in my stash for probably about 10 years and got a sweater out of it. Our next episode will be another dispatch from Scotland, and you'll hear a little bit about Marcia's project updates as well. I talked to her about recording a little bit onto the end of one of her last dispatch to talk about her projects. So that'll be the next episode that you hear, and it's been fun talking with you. Don't forget Nancy Swerner and Barbara Grist. Please get in touch with me so I can send you your prizes. All right, everyone. Bye. Thank you so much for listening. To subscribe to the podcast, visit 2usfiberadventures.com.
Join us on our adventures on Ravelry and Instagram. I am Better in Motion, and Kelly is 100 Projects.
Until next time, we're the 2Us
doing our part for World Fleece.